Hello and welcome to our video on DNA, chromosomes and the genome. Just before we get started, as usual, I'd advise that you have a pen and a piece of paper handy so that when I ask you to pause the video to have a go at the tasks, that you can do that before we then go through the answers. Okay, so we're going to have a little look at what DNA is, the structure of DNA, how DNA controls characteristics, the genome, and then kind of what the human genome actually is. So DNA is found in the nucleus of cells. It's stored as chromosomes. So we've got these large sections of DNA containing a number of different genes, are known as chromosomes. Chromosomes are arranged in pairs. We get one of each of the pairs from our parents. So we get one of those pair of chromosomes from our dad, and one of those pair of chromosomes from our mum. Humans have 46 chromosomes in 23 pairs in normal human body cells. So there's 46 in total. So we'll move on to genes, and if a long section of DNA containing a number of different genes is a chromosome, then a gene is a length of DNA that codes for a characteristic. Okay, so it will control a hair color or an eye color or a skin color or whatever it is that we're talking about. Okay, so they contain a code that regulates the proteins that are made in the body. Depending on which proteins you make, you'll have certain characteristics. Each chromosome could have hundreds of genes on it. So again, the difference with a chromosome is that it's a much longer section of DNA coiled up around proteins, and it could contain hundreds of different genes. Okay, so you can see in the keywords box we have DNA, gene, chromosome, and nucleus. This is the kind of thing we usually do right at the very start of a lesson just to make sure everybody's on the same page. If you could identify labels 1 to 4 on the diagram, they do go from 1 to 4, from the largest to the smallest. Okay, have a go at doing that now. Pause the video while you're doing it, and then we'll come back and do some answers. Okay, so the answers are all on the slide at the moment. The nucleus is a large organelle inside a cell containing a number of chromosomes. In the human body cells, it should be 46. From there, the chromosomes are made up of they are long strands of DNA. So we've got these long bits of DNA, and certain sections of that DNA will be genes. They will code for a characteristic. DNA has a particular structure, and again, you're expected to know certain words, certain terms around the structure of DNA. So DNA is a polymer. DNA is made up of repeating subunits. We've got what we'll call a nucleotide of DNA, repeated over and over and over again. The DNA is formed of two strands, which form a double helix. Okay, so the double helix is the shape that you can see there on the screen. Effectively, it's two helices, two coils wrapped around each other. So again, we have some questions just to check that you've understood what we've done so far. And once again, I'd probably advise you to pause the video here before I give you all the answers so that you can have a go at answering them for yourselves. The answers are coming up in a sec. I would be pausing now. Okay, so answers for that one. Polymers are a large molecule made of many small repeating units joined together. DNA has two strands and it forms a double helix. So if we move on, we're looking at how DNA actually controls our characteristics, our hair color, our eye color, our height. There's loads of stuff that can go in there. Each gene codes for a particular sequence of amino acids. All right, so each gene will have a code, will have letters. You might remember the letters, the A's, T's, C's, and G's that we'll learn about in lessons. A and T always go together, C and G always go together. opposite each other on the opposite strands, and these code for a particular sequence of amino acids. So amino acids are the parts that make up proteins. You might remember this from digestion. We'll talk about what happens when proteins are broken down. They're broken into amino acids. Once again, we have this another question for you to have a go of. So in this case, we're looking for how a gene determines a person's eye colour. Pause the video here and we'll do some answers in a sec. Okay, so a gene will code for a sequence of amino acids. That codes for a protein. The sequence of amino acids codes for a protein, which in this case would determine eye colour. We're going to move on. We're going to have a look at this idea of a genome, which might be a term that you know quite well, or it might be something that that actually we struggle with occasionally. So the genome is all of the DNA of an organism. All right, all of the DNA in a human being would be the human genome. Scientists have studied the whole human genome, so we've actually mapped the whole thing, and we know what all of the different chromosomes have on them. All right, is where you find different genes. Understanding the genome has helped us significantly. It's helped us identify genes that are linked with different diseases, so that hopefully in the future we can do something about that disease if currently there is no cure and no treatment. We've understood treatments better for things that are inherited. So if they're caused by a gene, we might be able to understand that disease a little bit better or treat it in a different way. We can see human migration and evolution, so the links between genes and from people on different continents, for instance, gives us an idea of where those people probably came from originally. And again, we have a little practice exam style question. We're going back a little bit here. Describe the structure of DNA. So again, we're talking about what DNA actually looks like. I would advise you to pause the video and then I'll come back and I'll do some answers. Okay, so anything from double-stranded, we'd be talking about it being double-stranded and twisted into a double helix is that term that we want to use again. So we have another exam style practice question here, and this one we haven't looked at so much. In 2003, the sequencing of the human genome was complete. We want to know what the human genome is and suggest how the understanding of the human genome could help someone with type 1 diabetes. Okay, again, let's jot down a couple of notes on some answers while you've got your video paused, and then I'm going to go through what should have been in those answers. So the human genome is the entire genetic material or genes or DNA of a human being. Remember that if it didn't say human genome, if it just said a genome, then it would be the entire genetic material of an organism. Suggest how an understanding of the human genome could help someone with type 1 diabetes. We could identify if the person has the gene for having type 1 diabetes, and we can probably develop new treatments or drugs that are going to help to control that condition. So we have another question here just to continue testing yourself with. This time, what is meant by gene? So we're looking for the definition of gene for a mark. And then we've got insulin is a hormone which controls blood sugar levels. Describe how a gene would code for the production of insulin. So how is it that these codes, this gene, could cause us to then be able to make insulin successfully? Again, let's get it on pause, and then I'll come back and I'll do some answers. Okay, so a gene is a length or a section of DNA which codes for a protein. You'd also be given the mark for which codes for a characteristic. The gene in question 2, insulin is a hormone. The gene codes for a sequence of amino acids which will join together to form a protein. Insulin, being a hormone, is a protein. All right, it's made of protein. Hormones, enzymes, all made of proteins. Okay, so that is the end of this video for today. A nice short one just on DNA and the human genome. Hopefully you feel like it helps. As always, good luck with the rest of your revision, and thank you for watching.